What's up guys, not Satan here. In my 8-month update video, I think I said about one line about hyperspeed listening. And for some reason people really picked up on that for some reason, which is pretty interesting. So I thought I'd make a quick video about it. So this whole hyperspeed listening thing, there's a lot of misconceptions that come with it. So my origin story of finding it was in the beginning of my immersion journey. Because I was really influenced by the sort of ACAT ideology, I removed a lot of trash English content, the stuff that you watch just for entertainment, like the like comedy related videos. But there's still some stuff that you want to watch, but you don't want to sacrifice your precious immersion time. And so using the settings in YouTube, I adjusted the playback speed to like 2 times speed. So because most of the content that I wanted to watch was kind of like it's considered entertainment, but because I want to just keep up to date with the sort of the events going around in some circles, so I thought it'd be good to keep those in my watching list. But once you reach 2 times speed for a while, it just becomes too slow. So I had to find a way to overcome this. And so there's a trick you can use with the HTML script. You can just change the speed, but that was annoying, right? So I found this plugin, this Chrome extension that allowed you to just go to speeds from 0.1 all the way to 10 times speed. And so I found that using this, I could watch stuff, mostly English content, at 3 times, 4 times speed, because this sort of stuff isn't that important in terms of learning. Like, of course, if you're watching rewatching a lecture video, you're obviously going to watch it at 1 time speed, or something like that. But or if you're watching like a really good movie, you're obviously going to watch it at the regular speed. But I mean, in terms of YouTube videos, it's not that important anyways. So because I could move up to 3 times, 4 times speed, I was freeing up maybe an hour extra or 2 hours extra of time per day for extra immersion, which I think is, of course, it's a huge benefit, right? And so yeah, that's for English. And then so once I started implementing this idea of hyperspeed listening with my English content, I came across another problem, was that so your listening skills in general do kind of increase, right? And so I found that when I was watching Korean material, what would happen is that sometimes it would feel a bit slow, but then I think this is a problem at the beginner stage, is that I kept on translating in my head, right? So it's this very weird phenomenon. It's that you don't want to translate in your head, but it's just naturally, it's the only way you can kind of gauge how well you understand the material for a beginner, is how well you can translate it. So it's kind of automatic, right? So I found that just by making the content slightly faster, so like 1.05 times speed or 1.1 times speed, so it's just slightly faster. So what happened was, once I made the content slightly faster, for some reason it was just fast enough that I didn't have enough time to translate in my head. So in a sense, this trained me to sort of stop translating in the beginner stage, which I think is a huge benefit, because you learn to see things in your target language. But so now, obviously, now I've got close to 9 months in the bag, that it's not that big of a deal anymore. But I think and that's why that actually led me to the next stage, was that passive listening. So it was stuff that was kind of boring to me, right? And so I found that if I can increase it to like 1.25 times speed, 1.3 times speed, because I'm using passive listening for purely just to gain more interactions or exposure to vocab and grammar, right? So I thought if I could listen at a speed which it was probably just fast enough that I could understand it, but not too fast I couldn't understand, like that boundary, if I could reach the boundary of my passive listening, I'll be able to have increased language density in a sense. So I'll have more exposure to grammar and vocab in my ear when I was passive listening. And so now all my passive listening is at 1.25 times speed, 1.3 times speed. And so the last stage of where I reached with my hyperspeed listening was recently. I found that because the more you know in terms of the language, you start to really find things to be boring. So you'll start to find boring things. So it was initially, when you're a beginner, everything is kind of interesting to you, right? Because it's like a game. Everything, there's something you can catch here, something you can catch there. But then I'm finding that the more I know, the less I find things to be very interesting, right? So then there's this sort of gray area where it's like there's some content which is I want to watch it, right? I want to watch it because maybe it's a key episode for the plot for a drama, or maybe it's some YouTuber or something, but I'm just not that invested in it, that particular episode or that particular video. So I found that I could just speed it up and I would not lose any comprehension at all, which was quite interesting. And so so that's about my history of it. And so what are the benefits that I saw? So I think this is quite interesting because well, obviously this is all purely anecdotal, so take my words with a grain of salt. So obviously the most obvious benefit was I could reduce the amount of time I spent listening to non-target language content, which meant more immersion time. So obviously if you're watching, let's say if you have a whole hour worth of English content, right? If you can watch it at 3-4 times speed, you're basically only using 15 to 20 minutes, right? So you literally have 40 extra minutes to do whatever else you want. So obviously in the long term, even if you remove a lot of content, you still have some content that you want to watch, right? And so especially with stuff like podcasts and everything, it's like you want to learn something, or it's entertainment, right? But you still want to immerse. So obviously by prioritizing the immersion content, you just watch the immersion content, the non-target language content faster, and boom, you got more immersion time. Easy fix. Then the next one was preventing translation in my head. So I mentioned it earlier, but basically I think this is great for beginners, but you stop translating in your head, which is a pretty cool, which is I think is probably the biggest benefit as a beginner, which I felt for hyperspeed listening. And then the next benefit would be to watch medium interest content faster. So I mentioned this at the end of my history with hyperspeed listening, but basically you get the better you get at a language, you find stuff to be boring, right? The more boring stuff that you find. So, but then there's like this kind of gray area where you want to watch, but you don't want to spend all that time watching it. So obviously having the ability to listen to things faster means that you can still watch stuff, but you don't have to spend all the time on it, and you still get the comprehension benefits, you still get the language benefits of it. I mean, obviously, okay, yeah, and then the next obvious one would be you get better at listening and parsing abilities for your target language. You'll definitely find that even with English, the faster you can, the higher speed you can go and still be able to comprehend. In general, your general comprehension abilities and your parsing abilities for that particular language, and maybe language in general, will increase. I think that should be agreed upon, right? So obviously if you listen to stuff faster in your target language, it should be no surprise that in the long term you'll be able to listen to regular speed stuff better. You'll be able to understand more and parse stuff more clearly. And I think the last cool benefit is you get to increase your language density. So I think this is very pseudoscience-y, but in my opinion, I think if you're listening to stuff faster, then you're getting more language in the same amount of time, in a less amount of time. And obviously, to some extent, you should be able to get more exposure to the language in a short amount of time. So that could have some benefit in terms of reaching your goals faster, but that's still up for debate. So now I'm going to talk about the use cases for this. So I think this is probably the most important point, because many people had a misconception that I was just watching everything, blasting 3 times speed, in my ears at all times, but that's not true. So what are the cases where I don't use hyperspeed listening, right? So I don't use it when I want to enjoy the content to the fullest, right? So maybe there's a fantastic episode, fantastic drama, or maybe it's a very interesting piece of K-pop content, or maybe it's very technical or very difficult content with a lot of difficult vocab. I'll watch it at regular speed because I want to enjoy it and I want to, reap the benefits, quote unquote, for all the hyperspeed listening, right? So I want to enjoy the good stuff, basically. So then when do I actually use it? So as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of low interest content, but you still want to watch. So I use hyperspeed listening for that. Then I think many K-drama heads can relate to this, but it's just like anime. Like in anime, there's a lot of filler episodes. So, and it's the same with dramas, and even web dramas too. There will be 1 or 2 filler episodes, or maybe even a lot more. So those, they kind of matter to the plot, but it's not so much that you have to capture every detail. So those I definitely push the dial up for my listening. And passive listening, I think, because passive listening is not like you're enjoying the content or anything, right? So I definitely dial the speed up for that one, because it's just get more exposure to the language, and it's just more fun to listen to stuff faster. So in general, I think that I actually don't use it that much. So people think that I'm just using it for everything, right? So I think since the majority of my content is still pretty interesting, I'd say for in terms of total usage, I think 80% of the time I'm just watching at regular speed, but the remaining 20% of the time I'm watching at 1.3, 1.4 times speed. And you'll find that the more you use it, you'll find that your speed increases. So, and it kind of increases in relation to your comprehension, but that's just anecdotal evidence, so I don't know. So then finally, for anyone who actually wants to try it and who has watched the entire video, so here's how you implement it. So I'll put a link in the description, but then there's this extension called the YouTube playback speed add-on, and so download that and set the increment to 0.1. So when you press plus or minus on the keyboard, it changes the speed in increments of 0.1. And so in the beginning, the most you can go is probably 1.1 times speed. And so the trick is to just push the speed, and it'll vary in terms of the content, but push the speed to where it's comfortable. So comfortable means that you understand everything that's coming in your ears. Well, I mean, not understand, but everything that enters your ears is not gibberish, basically. So there's a fine line between where everything's gibberish and where everything is still intelligible, right? And so there's that fine line. So you want to push yourself to that line, and over time it will that limit, that boundary will slowly increase over time. And so and then so don't think that you have to keep the same timing for every video. So some videos might have naturally faster speed, so you can push the speed a bit lower. Sometimes have slower speed, you can push the speed a bit faster. So adjust to make so you have to always be adjusting to make sure you're at the stage where you're comfortable. And the final tip, which I think is the most important, is don't use it for everything. Okay, so you should probably use it only when you know you need to. In the case where it's something's too difficult, or it's a good drama, or it's some good content, you don't have to use it. All right. So I hope this cleared some misconceptions about the whole hyperspeed listening thing. And as always,